Welcome everyone to part 4.2. In this part, we will build the environment for the lateral control. And we will start with the refactoring of the PID controller code that we did in part 3. Refactoring means that we create basically an object or an actor in Unreal that we can use in different places in the game for control or different control purposes. So I've created a new project here, new vehicle template or advanced vehicle template project. It's a C++ project like we did in the first part of this tutorial. So if you go under content and actually you go C++ classes here, as you see, we can create now a C++ class, and I want to create a pawn that will represent the PID controller. So here under C++ classes, we can get into this window, then right click here and create new C++ class. I want it to be as an actor because an actor is an object that can be placed. So it is not a character, so it doesn't move, but it plays a role in this game, which is in our case here, the PID controller role. Next, and here I would call it the PID. And then we need to create that class. Okay, so once it's finished creating this PID class, we see that we have a C++ PID class here. We want now to edit this class under the Xcode or the editor that we have. So if I go to our project under Xcode, we have the engine again, lateral control, the source. Then we have here the PID C++ and PID header. Now this is still empty and we need to fill it with our PID code that we have written in part 3. And basically we see it has also here the beginning and the ticker, which not really important for us because we will use actually this PID within the pawn. So the main pawn, which is the controller, he will call always this PID controller. That we will use it for now for first for the speed as well as the beginning, sorry, and then we will use it also for the steering or the lateral control. So what I want to do now is first to copy paste the code that I've prepared for this PID controller. Then I will go through it. It's basically the same what we have done. It's just refactoring of it, or basically reorganizing. It's basically here I would copy this under C++, and then we have this is the header that I will copy under the header file. Now we need to keep track of that, but it's okay. Let me just copy it here under. Now this is basically the difference. This is the another project that I was using for. I just need to replace that here, and then we can just remove this. So this is our C++ or PID object that has a header and has a C++ body. Going to the header, basically, we have the parameters that are PID controller variables and parameters. And this starting with the actual speed that we need to know in order to calculate the speed error. Both of them, they are blueprints that we can edit basically, and we can edit and write or read from the blueprint. And then we have the previous errors. If you remember this, for just to keep history of the error in order to be able to calculate the first derivative. So the next is the speed error derivative. And then the next is the accumulated speed errors. This we use it to calculate the integral. So this basically three variables, we use them to estimate the first derivative and the first or the integral. Then here we have the three gains, the proportional gain, the integral gain, and the derivative gain of the PID controller. Now here we have the target speed that we need to feed the controller with, or the reference point or the set point, also called. Now here we see something new, which is called the U function. It is like U property. Is something that we can access it in Blueprint, for example. We can call it in Blueprint as you see here. And here basically this our function is get controller actions that will apply the PID formula. So these are the basically the parameters. We have the private three private functions here. The first one would calculate the derivative. The second one would calculate the integral. And the third one is just to calculate the speed error. So this is the header. And if we go to the C++, basically just ignore this one because we didn't compile yet. First of all, we have the constructor of this class, which is the APID. Under this constructor, we're just initializing the three important variables, which is the proportional, integral, and derivative gains. Now here we don't need to tick or super, this is not a problem. The speed error, this is the formula that we had in the previous, or the part 3, where we take the target and we take the actual speed. We're just setting the actual speed, the local to the global one, or actually the one that belongs to the object here. The same for the target speed. Here we are just calculating the speed error. There is the second function is to calculate to estimate the first derivative, which is just the difference between the speed error and the previous error over the delta. Then we assign the speed error to the previous error just to keep the history. Next one is basically the integral. This is integral of speed error, which is basically the accumulated sum of speed error multiplied by delta t. Now, the functions that I talked about is the get controller action that we will be able to access in Blueprint, text delta, text ts, and text, which is here basically the target speed, the actual speed. Then first calculate the speed error, calculate the derivative, calculate the integral, then get the action value, which is the PID controller formula, then return this action value. So we need to save, then compile. Okay, so it's everything okay. Now is basically we need to import this PID class within our main pawn or the main player there. So we move back to C++. And this is the lateral controller pawn, which is our main pawn. As I said, we here need to include the header of the PID controller. So you can just copy it from here. Again, under the header. And I want to create here two U, or actually one U property. I would take basically the argument for this U property from here because it's easier to rewrite them, because here it's basically read only, defaults only. So I want to have under the control category edit anywhere blueprint write. And there we actually need to now to create an object, which is actually like creating a pointer to an object of class IPID here. So if we move back here, and that should be pointer. And here I would call it the speed PID. Okay. So this is our speed PID controller. And that's actually let's call it the cruise control, the cruise PID controller. Okay. So one thing we also need to have is the current speed of the vehicle, because it's something we need to use it within the PID controller. So here we actually have, if you remember, a variable. It's called kilometer per hour. So I would just do that float, kilometer per hour. Then here under the body of the pound, we can locate it. You just need to delete this float because it's already identified. So we move now back here. We compile. Let's hope everything is fine. Okay, we have an error. Okay, so include found after generated file. And let me check, where did I? Okay, so this should not be after the generated. Okay, that's good. So now what we want to do is basically to create a blueprint child of the C++ class here. The first reason is because in the lateral control, I want to use the blueprint. So I want to introduce to you how you can code with the blueprint as well, which is actually quite cool. It's graphical programming, so it's basically easy to understand. And yeah, I think it's easier to understand how the lateral control, because it's more like symbolic modeling. So it's with graphical programming, it would be more intuitive. So to do that, we need now, as I said, to create a child of this C++ code. So this child would inherit all the features of this object. So here create a blueprint class based on the lateral control bounds. So I would do that. I would call it the blueprint lateral control bound. Perfect. So this is now we have it here. And it is actually now under content. So we have here the blueprint lateral control bound. So it has the viewport, which is our car, and has the event graph as usual, which is we have the begin, the tick, and we have the overlap. This we'll talk about it later. So just to test if we have the PID, so what we can do now is check if we can get the speed PID controller. We see that we can get it actually. And this is the type of PID class. That's great. And what we want to do is now to control the speed of this vehicle, right? So what we want to get also the actual speed of this vehicle, and which is actually, it is the kilometer per hour, which is also defined. So this is another parameter here, or the variable. And we need to initialize or be able to initialize all the parameters, which is the important parameters, which are the three gain, the proportional, integral, and derivative. So here I would set the first the proportional there, and we need also to set the integral ki, and we need to set the derivative. So these are the three PID parameters that we need always to set. So they are all belongs to the PID controller class here. What is important to actually to notice here first, this we have basically two pins here. One is the value of that PID of actually the P here, the value of the P, or the value I, and the value of D. And here the execute. So this execute basically is to decide when to execute this part of the code. So I want to execute that at the beginning, so when the game starts. So first it would actually assign this value to the proportional gain, which is currently 0, and then the integral, which is also 0, and then the derivative, which is 0. So I don't want to set them here because I want to actually be able to set them externally, which means in the main editor window. So what we can do here is we can promote that to a variable, and we can call this variable actually KP. And I also want to promote this to a variable. We need to and I will call this KI so we can see them. Then we can create here a category, or we cannot now. Okay. And also I want to promote this to a variable. Okay, yeah. And I want to call this the derivative. These are three float variables. I compile, save. Now, if I put this pawn, which is we need now to put it inside the game, then it is interesting that we have only the proportional. I'll check why. Under control, we have this PID controller, KPH, okay, but here, okay, because here, when you put here I, basically that is public, which is visible outside. So now we can actually change these parameters here. So I'll put this 0.2, 0.2. I'll check if that would work with this from previous experiments. So this is 0.12. We are not done yet, of course. So this is the initialization of the PID controller. Now what you can do is just to organize also this here blueprint. We can collapse this node, and which I recommend because if you don't do that, the code would be too big or the graph would be too big to follow. Okay, so this is how it's called, just the PID parameters or gains, let's call it. And this would be at the beginning of the game. What you want now to do is basically to get the action of the PID controller, or to call the function that I talked about, which is called the get controller actions. Now this also needs to be executed. Actually, this will execute now at every tick like we have done in part 3 for the PID controller. It takes the actual speed, which is our kph, this one, and take the delta time, which is again this one. So the target speed, this also we can promote to a variable, and I would call this variable here the target speed. Okay, we make it visible. So next we need to now just to take the action and insert it to the throttle, so throttle angle. So it should be executed after that, because first we need to get the action value, which would be here. That is good. One thing more is we actually need to comment the part where it takes action from the keyboard. So this I will just comment it here. Then we need to compile. While it's compiling, one more thing, because this game always starts with the default pawn that I want to now, or actually let's keep it, because I want to show you basically that this car would to drive itself alone, and this that we can drive, and we can look at this autonomous speed controller car. Okay, so let's just have a final review. We need to put here the target speed. And so I just want to bring it near the main car so we can look at it. Okay, that's moving. Also, my car doesn't move because we committed the original action. Here we have so the issue here was that this speed controller object was not initialized. So we need always to initialize it, of course. We just basically define it within the class or within the pawn public properties, but we didn't initialize it. So we do need to initialize this one. So save compile. Just basically in the meantime, I just deleted the main actor, which is usually was here. And as we have done in previous sessions, we need to now possess a new actor, which is basically our main control pawn. So we just need to put it there. Then you need to call possess, and at the beginning of the game, we need to possess this one as a main pawn, and we need to get the player controller as well. So what is the solution then? Is basically we need to, as I said, assign a PID object to that reference that we have created. And to do that, basically, it's here in C++ classes. You remember this PID that we have created. We need to put it in the game. So we need just to drag it and put it in the game. We have here PID 106. I don't know why it's get that 106, but basically it is not that important here. What is important now is that this PID lateral control, it has the speed PID controller that has a non-value. This is why it was not working. So we need to give it a value, which is the PID 106. Now we can adjust the parameter of this PID controller actually from either from here, because these are the PID controller, or if we are here from these parameters that we have created. So if we save now and we press play, now we see it's working. So basically, the target speed is 30 kilometers per hour. It's actually quite good. Now, how to duplicate, or basically how to do that for multiple cars now. And I want to show you what is now module and how we can use it in different places for different cars, as I said. So here in Unreal, if you basically select these two, because now these two are related, okay? Whenever I create a vehicle, I need to create, or I need to insert a PID object for that, and I need to link them. So instead of doing that, I can select these two, then right click, then move to and create a new folder. I'll call it here, or autonomous, or let's call it self-driving car. And here we have the PID and the PID and the car. So what we're going to do now is basically we can duplicate this one, duplicate, for example, then we just need to move it because now they overlaps to the right, and then we can duplicate it again. Also, we need to move it maybe like this. Maybe if we go to the top view, because these are our three cars. And if we save, so now what you can see is if I select now the pawn 2, you can see that it's linked to the 107 directly. Pawn 3 is linked to 108. So if I press play, you can see that the three cars are, I'm controlling only one of them, of course, with the steering, because we don't have automatic steering yet, but all the three cars are, are driving autonomously. All of them will have the 30 now kilometer per hour. Now we can, of course, for car 3, for example, I can do it 10. For the car 1 here, I can just to actually make it oscillating, can make it 0 here, then 0.5. Let's see, and the target speed is 40. Press play. So this one is slow. Actually, this one started to go back. And the other one is too fast. This was the other one was the 60 kilometer per hour. Wow. 40, I think I said it at 40, yeah. Let's put 20. See, now this one has really oscillation. It's unstable because we played with the PID controller parameters. Okay, so now we have module PID controller. Let's delete these two cars. We don't need them now. And what is the next step? So the next step is basically to change this environment to make it more realistic, and also to focus on the track here, because we will do steering control. So we need to have not only straight road, we need to have curve as well in order to evaluate our steering control system. So what I want to do basically, first of all to delete these ones because we are not here racing or playing, so it should be realistic. We need to delete this kind of bumps. Okay, here we have, because we deleted that, we have something strange. We need to fix that as well. Let's see how we can fix it. I want to duplicate this one. So delete this. And so under here arena mesh, we can select maybe instead of that. So let's check if we can actually, yeah, it seems to be good. 270 degrees. Okay. So instead of doing that, we can, just to avoid having this kind of visible steps, let's move to the top move. Okay, here you can see it's kind of visible. So I will delete this one and select this one, and let's scale it along, nope, sorry, along the x-axis. Okay, that's good. But what we can do, of course, now, then scale this one select here light. Okay, seems okay. Yeah. It's a little bit here, of course, deformed, but we will change the texture of that rod anyway. And here we need also to connect them. If we scale, okay. Then everything looks fine. Let's try that. So I'm driving now, but the speed is using the PID controller. Yep. All right, looks good. Perfect. Do next is basically to change the so the texture of this rod and also of the environment to make it more realistic, as I said. So what I'm using here, we have basically a package or material that you can buy. I'm not sure if it's free or not. Let me check. It's called Roads and Path by Game Text. If we click over it under the marketplace, okay, so I have it. I don't know what is the price, but I don't think it's expensive. And you don't need that. But just here basically to make it, as I said, more realistic, because here you have they have really nice texture and materials for roads. So what if you have it, what you can do basically under here, again, library, we need to add this to project, and I want to add it to my lateral control project. So you need to wait a little bit. Then when this progress bar is finished, you can see we got directly a notification from our game that there are changes, because it's basically adding new materials and textures. So if I click import, it will import them. Now we see it here under road back game texture. You just need to wait a little bit because the shader now is compiling. Still waiting. Okay. And so if we go here in the arena, for example, because here we have different objects that we need to change the texture. And here, double click, or actually without double click, if you look here on the right side, you have the material of the side of that road, and we have the material of the road itself. So first I want to change the material of this road. These are coming from the new material that I added. And I want to select, let's try this one. Okay, because this is actually from that, which I don't want. I want actually to change the material of this. So double click, it's better. Okay, save, and let's see, yeah. Okay, we have the same issue here, of course. And for that, we need to correct, actually, we need to delete that and copy paste, because otherwise it doesn't look that good. And what else? Let's check if this is actually what I want, the texture that I want. Okay, let me check the second one. Okay. Or so road. I think this I like it more, but I need to change this, as I said. We need to do that. So what's material here. It is called the ground ESP. So here basically we need to do that for this one. Grounds, this one. And so I think we need to change all because we don't know which part was used. And this one. So we have this one, of course. And the last one. Perfect. So looks fine, except here. What we need to do now is to Control D, just duplicate. Maybe this one now. Yep. Not 180, 17. And new almost. I mean, we still need to correct this material anyway, because you can see here, this is strange. So to delete this one and maybe copy 3, then Control W. Yeah, this is better. Now save. Let's play and see. Here, but that's fine. Right. I think I want to change the material, but let me check for the last time. Because I remember there was a better one. Yeah, this one, which is called roads. Okay. Okay, you can skip some minutes in this video because I'm just changing the material again, because that one I didn't like. Road spelt. And Okay, this is not good. Well, let me check if we find an empty road filled without two lines. Okay, better. Not perfect, but better. Let's try for this as well. Did we change this one? No. Okay, this one also looks not that good because of these two stupid lines. And I'll try to, no, no. Hmm. This sounds fine. Okay, so this is one thing. The other thing is basically to change now the texture of this road here on the ground. So if you are wondering now what happened, is basically I just added some materials. Where to find this material? We did the mistake at the beginning. We didn't select the starter content, but as with when we created the project. But it's not a big issue if you actually go to your projects and if you go to the previous project that we created under content, we have the starter content there that you can copy and paste it under our project, which is the lateral control project, this one, content, and then you will see it there. If you don't have another project, you can create a new one which has starter content and you can copy it from there to here. So under starter content and here under materials, we see that we have different materials that we can use. For example, we need now to change the material of this ground or this floor. But just by selecting this material, grabbing it and moving it over that floor. So I would select here green. And for the landscape, now, if we look down here, if you click over this landscape, you can also change that material. I'll select this rust. Now it's not basically because the shader need to compile. Let's compile the lightning. Okay, now it's fine. It looks to okay. Let's check if we have under the rod pack if we have a good material for the landscape. Maybe this one. Ground. It's called ground dry. So it's compiling the shaders here. Let's build the lights. Oof, okay. No, that wasn't. It looks cool though. Okay. What about the, okay, let's go back to starter contents materials. To change it from here. So it is concrete. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so now we have a nice, let's say, environment that we can now use it for the steering control. And in the next video, we will basically add the splines that would basically represent our motion planning. These splines basically represent the path that the car should follow using the steering control. Thank you.